And again, good evening. Welcome to our Wednesday night study. We are doing what I refer to as an after Bible study. And we are looking at Bible patterns in modern times. And what we will do, as usual, for our Wednesday evenings is start with a scripture to get us going on a scriptural foundation. And then we'll look at some things from here. Like last time, probably break it out in a couple sessions, moving forward from 2016 into 2017. So we're dealing with the last decade, just these last 10 years here. So we'll take a look at some things, but first and foremost, a scriptural look. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 27. One final look at this passage, dealing with the blessing of Esau and blessing of Jacob, and the blessing that Esau did not get. And a final thought on this that will tie in with the Sunday morning message. Now, teacher's note here, at the end of class on Wednesday, I had called our attention back to this passage and was going to read another devotional thought on that, but then I got so carried away in the conversation that I forgot to come back to this. And so, but we did do a double dose in the beginning of class, so we got our two covered. But it actually kind of worked out because now we get to look at this after the context of Sunday's message, so I think that actually works well. But anyway, you'll see what I'm talking about here as we go. Genesis 27, let's take a look now from verses 27 down to 41. So Genesis 27, verse 27, this is where Jacob is disguised and pretending to be Esau to get the blessing that Isaac is intending to give to Esau, and he's doing this at the behest of his mother Rebekah, who was told by God that Jacob would be the one to be blessed and not the older brother Esau. The twins, but Esau's the older one. And so I'm sure Mom Rebekah told Dad Isaac that that's what God had said, but Isaac's playing his favorites and his eyes are dim, he can't see. He's thinking he's on death's doorstep, but he still lives a few decades after this. But anyway, a lot of human factors involved. But let's read Genesis 27 down to 41. Genesis 27. So he came close and kissed him, and when he smelled the smell of his garments, he blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field, which the Lord has blessed. Now, may God give you of the dew of heaven, and of the fatness of the earth, and an abundance of grain and new wine. May people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be master of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you." Now going on from there, verse 30. Now it came about, as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had hardly gone out from the presence of his father Isaac, that his brother Esau came in from his hunting. Then he also made a delicious meal, and brought it to his father, and he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled violently, and said, "Who then was he who hunted game and brought it to me, so that I ate from all of it before you came, and blessed him? Yes, and he shall be blessed." When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me as well, my father." And he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and has taken away your blessing." Then Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has betrayed me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." And he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" But Isaac replied to Esau, "Behold, I have made him your master, and I have given to him all his relatives as servants, and with grain and new wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me as well, my father." So Esau raised his voice and wept. Then his father Isaac answered and said to him, "Behold, away from the fertility of the earth shall be your dwelling, and away from the dew of heaven from above. And by your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But it shall come about when you become restless that you will break his yoke from your neck." So Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. So no, the days of his father's mourning are not near. And the birthright thing, that was an agreed upon arrangement. Yeah, Jacob may have taken advantage of Esau's weakened state, but Esau voluntarily chose to do all that. So there we go. Yeah, go ahead.
You said Esau voluntarily?
There's the birthright and the blessing. This passage is about the blessing. Before that was the birthright. When Esau comes along, famished from being out hunting, and he's starving, and Jacob's sitting there with the pot of lentil stew, and he says, "Gimme." And Jacob says, "Yeah, what are you going to give me for it?" He says, "Give me your birthright." And Esau says, "What good's my birthright if I'm dead?" "Sure, have my birthright." So Esau traded his birthright for a bowl of soup. But he agreed to it.
Yeah. But it's like, I'm fixing to think of every time the Grizzlies, Daddy realized he messed up. Right? Why couldn't he rescind everything and start over?
Doesn't work that way.
Why not?
Because this is what God established.
I'm going to let you got my inheritance, and then find out something is not right. I change the will and take you back out of it.
In these cases, there are no take-backsies.
There what?
No take-backsies. Doesn't work that way. Yep. So make sure you do it right the first time. Yep. Now, as we've seen, Jacob has his consequences from all that. So what's the, I mentioned this relates to the Sunday morning message. Well, the Sunday morning message was about the Magi and Herod, and then Jesus at the temple at 12 years old. So what's that have to do with Jacob and Esau? Well, here we have the devotional from Jonathan Cahn, Messianic Rabbi, his book, The Book of Mysteries. Here we go. Most people have heard of Herod, King Herod, how he slaughtered the children of Bethlehem in his attempt to kill the Messiah, but there's more to the story. Mystery begins ages before. When Isaac blessed his son Jacob, he told him he would have dominion over his brothers, and men would bow down before him. But when Isaac blessed Esau, he told him he would live by the sword and under the dominion of his brother Jacob. Esau was so filled with rage, he plotted Jacob's death. But what happened to Jacob? Who are his descendants? Who are the descendants of Jacob? Jacob's name was changed to? What was Jacob's name changed to? When the wrestled with the angel. Jacob has 12 sons. They are the 12 tribes of? Israel.
Yeah, right. I was going to say, but I'm like, wait.
Yep. I know it's late in the evening and I'm making you think.
Last name Ladder.
That's the devotional that we're going to end on. Jacob's ladder. That's funny. Yeah, Jacob S. Ladder is his name. Yes. No. So the Jewish people, Israel, are the descendants of Jacob. What about Esau? Esau's descendants, they're called the Edomites. They became the nation of Edom. Isaac's prophecy would come true. Esau's children, the Edomites, would live under the dominion of Israel, under the children of Jacob. In the days of the Roman Empire, they were called the Idumeans. Kind of similar, Edom, Idumeans. So just changing the vowels there. But it was then something strange happened. An Idumean became the king of Israel. A child of Esau ruled over the children of Jacob. That child of Esau was Herod. Herod's a descendant of Esau. Wow. Yeah, he's an Idumean, which means he's an Edomite, which means he's an Esauan. Yeah, how about that? It was the ancient battle. Esau warring over the birthright and blessing, seeking to have dominion over Jacob. But then another extraordinary thing happened. Messiah was born. Messiah was a child of Jacob, and thus had the true birthright and the true blessing of dominion and lordship. By the way, his stepfather Joseph, Joseph's dad, Jacob. His blood father, Jacob. So we have two kings, the true and the false, Esau and Jacob, Herod and Messiah. And just as Esau plotted to kill Jacob, so Herod, the son of Esau, plotted to kill Messiah, the son of Jacob. Behind it all was the ancient mystery. The mystery tells you how crucial it is to receive the blessing. Without it, you'll spend your whole life compensating for its absence. Whatever you didn't receive in this world no longer matters. It is now you must receive from your heavenly Father your blessing and your birthright. For if Messiah is your king, you are of the kingdom of Jacob. It's the kingdom of those who have received the blessing and the kingdom of the blessed. So what do y'all think of that? Neat, spiffy, boring, who cares?
Diana said, she said Israel, and then she said whoa.
Then she said what?
Whoa.
Whoa. Yeah, Israel and whoa. Yep. Amen on both counts. Amen on Israel and amen on whoa. Yeah. That's a fact, Jack. All righty. So with that scriptural foundation laid for us, let's dive into this last decade. So start my screen share here. There we are. Here we go. All righty. So let's see here. Switch over to there. So we're getting into 2016 into 2017, the last decade here. Looking at Jonathan Cahn's latest book, The Avatar, which came out in September, The Return of the Ancients and the Future of America. Look at some conversation starters going on here, looking at some spiritual behind the scenes to some things. So let's see what we see. We left off with this. I didn't share this screen at the time, but basically how in 2016, with the election of President Donald Trump defeating Hillary Clinton for the presidency and him replacing Barack Obama as president, we have the winding down of the dynasty of the Ahab template, where we're seeing in this theme of Avatar how human beings from the Bible lived out and carried out certain actions and events, and those form a template that gets replayed in modern times. Not in lockstep, every single thing lining up, but a lot that makes it kind of interesting. So following this template, and again, as I'm mentioning, real life human beings, make sure we don't hyperfixate on the individuals. The key is, as we see these events and see these Bible patterns, to see the spirits behind the scenes. People on the Lord's side and opposed to the Lord are being used by spirits on both sides and by the Lord himself. People don't always know they're being used. Just their life choices make them accessible and open. That can be a bad thing, of course, on the demonic side. It can actually be a good thing if you're open to the Lord using you. He might use you without you even realizing it. Just be about the things that are right and true in the Lord and see what happens. So anyway, following the Ahab and Jezebel template, we have President Bill Clinton fitting the template of Ahab. He's now, like Ahab, out of the picture, off the scene, off the national stage. We have the Jezebel template being filled by his wife, Hillary Clinton. She stayed in the palace. She stayed in government after her husband had departed. And one of their children, one of their followers after them, who would carry on, would be Barack Obama, who follows the template of their son Joram. So Ahab, Jezebel, and Joram. But all three of them are now taken off the table with the 2016 election of Donald Trump, who fits the template of Jehu, who God raised up and had the servant of Elisha anoint him at the top of the stairs with the blowing of the trump and all that stuff. And he was specifically anointed to oppose the house of Ahab. And so we see that replaying here. So that's kind of where we had left off last time. So now picking up with other 2016 events. Let's talk about, real quick, Mr. Fidel Castro. We've talked about him in prior sessions and whatnot. So here's something of note regarding Castro. Quick flashback. Jonathan Cahn shares this. When I journeyed across Cuba, that was back in 1999, June of 99, I believe it was, I was led to share of the Jubilee. This was the month that Castro allowed a Christian revival to take place. Then it was shut down after the month was over. And Jonathan Cahn was a partaker of that. So when I journeyed across Cuba, I was led to share of the Jubilee. the biblical year of restoration, return, release, and freedom. So he talked about that while he was there proclaiming Christ. It was in connection to the Jubilee that I sounded the trumpet, the instrument by which the Jubilee was inaugurated. At the end of the journey, after the mass gathering in Revolution Plaza, Havana, I gave Fidel Castro, through his servants, I gave him 3 objects: a Bible, a piece of paper with a prophetic word concerning the Jubilee, and a shofar, the vessel of the Jubilee and sign of God's power. So that happened June of 1999. He says the Jubilee was the 50th year. 9 years after the giving of those 3 objects, Castro entered the 50th year of his reign, the Jubilee. And we covered that going through the Josiah Manifesto. It was in that 50th year that the reign of Fidel Castro was brought to an end, on the 50th day of the 50th year. That was February 19th of 2008, 9 years after that revival in 99. So February 19th of 2008, Castro resigned and stepped down. As the vessel of Jubilee had removed the crown of Oshun, remember the plate fell and knocked down the idol? So the Jubilee, the 50-year mark, removed the crown of Fidel Castro, his power, his authority, and his rule. So why are we bringing up what happened in 2008 with Castro stepping down? Because now in 2016, we have the passing of Mr. Fidel Castro. So his stepping down was at the Jubilee of his start. He had a 50-year thing. And a Jubilee is a going back to what was before, a return. So basically, what he had launched is now going in an opposite direction, somewhat, even if it's slowly. But talking about the death of Castro, there's some significance here. So check this out. After dominating Cuban life for half a century, Fidel Castro died on November 25th, 2016. The Cuban government announced there would be 9 days of mourning until the funeral. The 9-day rite of mourning can be found in varied Catholic cultures, but in Cuba, it is known to be a Santerian rite with roots in Africa, where it is given to facilitate the journey of the deceased spirit to the gods, lowercase g, of course. Castro was now following the journey ordained for souls to enter the realm of the gods, lowercase g. So what just happened here? What are we talking about? He dies on November 25th, 2016, and they say, we're going to put him to rest 9 days later. We're giving 9 days. Well, not only was it a general Catholic thing, but in specific Cuba, it was a Santeria. Remember that demonic worship that came over from Africa that was on the face Catholic, but behind the scenes, when they were worshiping Catholic saints, they're really worshiping these false gods from Africa. And how Castro had been in line as an avatar following the template of the false god Chango. So now the Santerian rite of giving 9 days before they're laid to rest, he's given that same thing in line with that. So he's going to be laid to rest 9 days after this. And as I go, if anyone has any questions, any thoughts or reactions, feel free to stop me. If you need me to slow down, need to take a breath, take some things in, feel free to let me know. And also, if you get it and you're ready to move forward, just give me the signal. We'll move on to it. You guys are the gas pedal here. So I'm here for y'all. So that happened November 25th. So then the calendar moves along. And I want to share something. Speaking of the Santerian religion, let me tell you about this feast day. I mentioned Chango. On December 4th, they have a celebration called the Feast Day of Santa Barbara, or Chango here. And I'll even click on this, get a little zoom here. There's Chango here in his little, whatever you want to call it here. I'm blanking out on the words here. Shrine, I guess would be a good word. So, what are we doing here? Yeah. You've never, yeah, it's actually a very common thing to leave offerings of food, at the feet of idols. The funny thing is, the idols never eat it.
No.
Yeah, the priest ended up just taking it away, yeah. Funny how that works. So, yeah. So there's the idol, and there are the offerings and whatnot. So go back here. There we are. So December 4th, feast day of this false god Chango. That Castro happens to be associated with. Chango in Cuba, who goes all the way back to Africa. Okay? Check this out. So let's talk about this. This is from the Avatar here. Once a year, Cuba pauses to give homage to the god Chango. People of the land dress up. We're probably going to keep this up while we're going.
I don't want to see that.
You don't want to see that. Let's go back. All right. It should be. You're right. I don't blame you. So the people of the land dress up in red, Chango's color, gather in temples and shrines, light candles, present red roses on his altars, and apparently bananas, and hold festive processions. It is the day or festival of Chango. On Chango's day, gatherings for the Orishas, known as Bembes, are held throughout the island. It is in these gatherings they beat drums to ancient rhythms to summon the spirits of the gods, or as we would say, demons. When you hear me talking spirits or gods lowercase g or anything like that, anytime we're not talking about angels on the Lord's side, we're talking about demons. So let's make that very, very clear. The gods are then invited to possess one of the worshipers. The festival of Chango is one of the most important celebrations of the Cuban year, a day appointed to give homage to its king of the gods. Chango's the big guy, right? So we have December 4th, the feast day of Chango. So there's that. Well, Castro died on November 25th, remember? So Cuba then buries Castro, entering the post-Fidel era, okay? When did this happen? Oh, look, December 4th, 2016. Feast day is December 4th. Castro was laid to rest December 4th. So what does this mean? An ancient mystery was at work that went back to the rulers of Egypt and Mesopotamia, to the days of the god kings. Castro had come to his final resting place on December 4th. It was no accident. December 4th was the day of Chango. So what does that mean? All the parallels between the Cuban ruler and the Cuban god have been leading up to that last day and that one final convergence. The day appointed to pay homage to Fidel Castro fell on the day appointed to pay homage to Chango. So now, the day on which Cubans set up candles and red roses in memorials to honor Castro fell on the same day that Cubans were to set up candles and red roses in honor of Chango. It was only because Castro died on the day he died that it all converged on the day of Chango. So because he died 9 days before, this was done for him on the 9th day, 9 days later. So there's that. And then this other observation here. There we go. So talking about the god kings, and we started off kind of looking at this, how in the early days of Mesopotamia and Egypt and all that stuff, how the pharaohs and the Mesopotamian kings were worshipped as gods themselves. They were like avatars of gods. They were considered deities themselves, all that stuff. Mentioned some of this before, but now we're tying it into Castro and Chango. When the Pharaoh Dudamos II, 1446 BC, when the Pharaoh stood against Moses and the Hebrews, he did so as an agent of the gods of Egypt. When Ahab and Jezebel persecuted Elijah and the prophets, so now around 864 BC, they did so as agents of the gods of Phoenicia, where Jezebel had come from. Indeed, one can see this in Jezebel, an avatar of Ishtar or Inanna. Remember, there's the three Mesopotamian gods. There's Baal, Ishtar or Ashtoreth in the Bible, his consort. So Baal, the false god contrary to God, and Ashtoreth or Ishtar, Inanna, Aphrodite, Venus, all that stuff, who is sexuality contrary to God, and then Moloch, child sacrifice, obviously contrary to God. So Jezebel is an avatar of Ishtar, the goddess of immorality and fierce destroyer of those she saw as her enemies, which Jezebel was doing. When the post-Christian dictator Fidel Castro warred against God and his people on the island of Cuba. Remember, he made it atheist and he persecuted Christians. He did so while unwittingly mimicking the Santerian god Chango, even up to the day of his burial. So now, if there were to rise an American equivalent of the ancient god kings, one who would manifest their image, implement their agenda, and serve as their agent, what would that rising look like? And that's what we're going to see going forward from here. So, on that note, any reactions, thoughts, or questions on Castro and Chango and avatars and god kings and all that? Pretty much is what it is. The connection he's drawing here, do you see it kind of fitting, or do you think he might be stretching a bit, or what do you think? So you might think he might have something here? Don't know, not sure.
I don't understand. I mean, was it just when they were both going to be worshiping that one person, that they were thinking that it was him, that Castro, or?
Great question. I'm so glad you asked. So, Sister Carolyn's asking about what exactly is going on here with the celebration and honoring of both here. So, just as in the Catholic faith, there are feast days for different saints. For example, we just had St. Patrick's Day, which, by the way, Patrick wasn't Irish and wasn't really a saint. But anyway, so there are days set aside for specific saints. December 4th was a day set aside for Chango, this demon, this false god going back to Africa. So it just so happened that when Castro died on November 25th and was given 9 days before his burial, that Castro would be buried and honored on December 4th, the very same day that's already a day of honoring Chango. So Castro and Chango are being honored on the same day. What does that mean? Well, we've already seen, and we've talked about it in prior Wednesdays, so many alignments between the legend and the myth of this Chango and the actions of Fidel Castro. Him following that template, him being an avatar of that. So he was literally, up to the day he was buried, he was still mimicking, without his awareness even, the following in those steps of Chango. And while Castro is obviously just a flesh and blood human being like any one of us, here he is being associated and tied in and calling to mind this demon, false god, known as a Chango here. So it's basically how his life choices were in keeping with this demon, and how all of the factors surrounding this demon that he's chosen to inhabit. And I think that's a very good word for it. Remember, man-made idols, man-made rituals are all empty. There's no life in there. It's all man-made. But what a demon will do is see us doing that and opening up ourselves to these things. And so the demon will inhabit that. And even though there was no life or character or personality to the idol, the demon will play it out and will give life to it, causing us to think, or these people to think, hey, this is the real deal. No, you're not conjuring up anything. This demon is leading you by the strings. And so you're not the one. So you're being duped and fooled into thinking you're in control here, but you're actually being seduced and manipulated by a demon. And so all of this, yay Chango, well, and Castro fit right into it. So all those who were in line with Castro, following Castro, they end up following a demon, whether they realized it or not. Castro himself was not a demon. He was just a flesh and blood human being like us. But he carried out the character and the will of this demon. And everything that this demon has brought out, Castro went right along with it, Sister Ashley.
Diane's asking, is Chango related to Django?
No. Good question. You can look up the different lexicons and different uses in different locales for Django, D-J-A-N-G-O, versus Chango. There are some variations and crossovers. We see, as Jonathan Kahn has pointed out, how these gods from Africa made it to Cuba, they made it to Brazil that we saw, and whatnot. And so a couple different places and some variations, but Yeah, I don't have anything specific on Django itself. But yeah, so that could be somewhat of a offshoot or variation or completely separate thing.
I just got that.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you asked. Thank you, Sister Diana, for the question there. So, Sister Carolyn, does that help with what's going on here?
So now, when it becomes that day that they celebrate, is that him being celebrated also?
Yes.
With him?
Now, I don't know, to clarify an answer to your question, if on every December 4th now they're thinking, hey, this is the day we buried Castro. There could be some that honor that. But it's definitely still a day of honoring Chango. And so it'd be really surprising and kind of obtuse, kind of an oversight on their part to be doing all the Chango stuff and not be able to see how everything they're worshiping and celebrating about Chango is what their leader Castro just did. And for them to miss that connection would be a very spiritual blindness. Yeah, so good question. So moving on into 2017. So this part is review, then we'll close this section with a new item in 2017. So 2017 on, let's see, no, we'll skip that, let's go here. In March of 2017, this is very interesting considering current events. No, we don't want that one, we want this one. Here it says, Trump issues warm New Year greetings to Iranians. March of 2017, Trump's first year as president, he issued a statement at the White House on the occasion of Nowruz, New Year's Day celebration of ancient Persia, which became Iran. So the president's statement, and they've got the full text down there. In the president's statement, he speaks of King Cyrus. Cyrus was the one who, after Persia conquered Babylon, Cyrus is the one who's mentioned by name by Isaiah a couple hundred years prior. And Cyrus is the one who, at the end of 2 Chronicles and the beginning of the book of Ezra, Cyrus is the king of Persia who lets the people return after their Babylonian captivity, go back and rebuild the city of Jerusalem and start to work on the temple and all that stuff. So Trump actually mentions Cyrus in his warm greeting to the people of Iran. Now, he's not addressing the government that's anti-American, anti-Israel. He's addressing the people so kind of an important distinction here. And the statement contains a quote. It isn't the words of the quote that are most significant, but their context. It's actually apocryphal, a saying that's attributed to the ancient king Cyrus. The president says this to the nation of Iran, the people. Cyrus the Great, a leader of the ancient Persian Empire, famously said that, quote, freedom, dignity, and wealth together constitute the greatest happiness of humanity. And he's wishing that for the Iranians on this occasion of their new year here. So it's not only that the president issues a public statement in which he speaks of Cyrus, but that he speaks words that are attributed to the ancient king. In other words, he isn't only speaking of Cyrus, he's now speaking as Cyrus. He's agreeing with Cyrus in this. And so the president and the king Cyrus are joined together. And this takes place before an act that President Trump does later on that will manifest a mystery of those two in front of the whole world. So here he is offering well wishes to the people of Iran in 2017. So cool, right? All good? Yeah. So now we get to our closing item for this session here, April 6th of 2017. So let's go here. On April 6th of 2017, there is a celebration for some. It is the celebration of the Planned Parenthood's 100th anniversary. All that crazy stuff. Anyway, so what are we looking at here? So Hillary Clinton, following the template of Jezebel, with the false gods and the sacrifices and all that stuff. Jezebel was the chief advocate of child sacrifice in the land. So Hillary Clinton would be named as Planned Parenthood's abortion champion of the century. So, don't know if that's something you'd want to be known for, but that is what she is here being celebrated for on Planned Parenthood's 100th anniversary. So that happened. Any reactions or thoughts on that? Alrighty. So that's where the early 2016 into 2017 session will stop, and we'll pick up going on from here. So let's go ahead and stop that screen share and stop this recording, and we'll pick right back up again.